A narrative essay is a piece of writing in which the author presents a theme or a lesson and tells a story that illustrates it. Now, writing a narrative essay is a simple four-step process. Well, we'll make it simple. Step 1. Choose your theme. Here are elements of a narrative essay. A narrative essay must have a theme, a motif, or a lesson in it. It must have a beginning, a middle, and an ending because it is based on a story. And it must have setting, conflict, plot, characters, at least one character, and a climax. As you can see, these are elements of a story, of any story. If you think of a Hollywood movie or a novel, you will find these elements in it. Your essay should be about a theme, motif, or lesson, some kind of a moral of the story. That should be the main subject of your essay. Let me give you an example. The shadow side of the human psyche is one of the motifs that keeps emerging in The Lord of the Rings. More specific examples are Bilbo Baggins, Frodo, and Gollum, and each of these characters experiences this descent, this sudden and rapid descent into the shadow side when exposed to the ring. When in the presence of the ring, each of these characters gets in very, very close contact with their evil side. That's just one of the themes in Lord of the Rings, and you can write an essay just on that theme. In fact, that's what you should be doing. You should pick a theme and write an essay on it. Here's our sample theme. What goes around comes around. And let me give you a little synopsis. So I once worked at a car dealership where my general manager tried to pocket my bonus, and that backfired for him. Now that we have picked our theme, step 2 is to create an outline. Now, a narrative essay offers you flexibility in how to tell your story. And here are 3 possible ways to structure a narrative essay. And here's the first one. Present a theme or motif in the first paragraph and then provide 3 examples to illustrate it. This is very similar to an expository or an argumentative essay. Your theme or motif would be pretty much the thesis of this essay, would be the main argument, and then you would provide evidence to support it. That's one way to do it. The second way is to present a conflict or problem and tell a story of how dealing with a problem resulted in a revelation or transformation. In other words, first the story happens, and then as a result of everything that happens in the story, the character has a revelation or an epiphany or a transformation. The third way, and in my opinion the best way of doing it, is to present a conflict or problem and then tell a story of how the character, likely the author, meaning you or me, had to transform. The character had to transform in order to overcome this conflict or problem. In other words, the transformation happens immediately prior to the resolution, not after the resolution. It's not like the resolution happened and then you realize, oh, so this is how it happens. No, you have to transform. Your behavior has to change in order for a new result to come about. Here's our sample narrative essay outline. Here's part 1, and we're going to have 5 parts, and parts 1 through 5 are going from the beginning to the ending. So this is the beginning. This is the setup. In part 1, we state the theme and describe the conflict. Here's an example. How my general manager made a promise but then began a game of cat and mouse. Part 2, the immediate effects of the situation. At first, I did not realize a problem existed. Now, maybe the viewer, maybe someone reading this is already realizing something that I don't realize in the story. But then I began to get a clue. I started to feel cheated. And therein lies the real conflict. So we have the beginning of the story here. We have the conflict set up, and that's the most important part of the story. You need to have some kind of a conflict. Part 3. I took initial action to no avail. I pleaded with my general manager. I also spoke with my sales manager. Both kicked me around. Okay, now I realized that my general manager was breaking his promise, causing me a potential loss of money and dignity. So now I really know I have a problem, and this is getting already into the climax. Why? Because I'm already pissed, right? I'm fully aware that I have a problem. Part 4. This is the climax. I plucked up courage and took decisive action. In other words, I transformed. I had to do something I had never done before. I had to make a drastic decision to change a situation I resented. And I was in this situation for the first time in my life, and I had to take action I had never taken before. And finally, part 5, this is the climax resolution. I got the result. Now, my general manager got his due, and I got mine. Okay? So this sounds exactly like a story. And that's exactly what it is. It is a story. It has one theme, and it has one narrative. It has the beginning, the middle, and the ending. Step 3, write each paragraph using the outline. And let's do it starting with part 1. So here's our paragraph 1. I'm going to have 5 paragraphs. What goes around comes around. As you can see, I immediately start with the theme, and I state the theme in the first sentence, and that's perfectly fine. You can do exactly that. What goes around comes around. That's the lesson, and now let's hear it. I learned the truth of this old saying in 2011 when I worked at a car dealership selling new and used cars. One fine day, during a Saturday morning meeting, our sales manager announced that he would pay a $1,000 bonus to the salesperson who would sell his car. That sounded great, and it just so happened that a few days later I served a customer who became interested in his high-end sports Mercedes. The customer left without buying, but then came back a couple of days later to seal the deal. I delivered the car. The happy customer drove off. It turned out that my sales manager had called the customer and offered him a better price. Great. The only problem was that days were going by, but I was not getting my bonus. Okay, now there's our setup. It's clear that I have a problem. It may be more clear to the reader than it is to the author, meaning in the story, I may not be already very aware that I have a problem here, but the reader is getting a clue for sure. Paragraph 2. The conflict escalates. I'm getting more clear on it. A car dealership has its own unwritten laws, and I'm explaining that. One of them states that if a salesperson meets and greets a potential customer and the person buys a car, this sale is credited to this salesperson. Also, sales managers do not get a cut of the deal if they help make it happen. These are the rules of the car dealership. Only salespeople can share a deal if 2 of them participated in it. I rightfully expected to get paid. One bi-weekly check went by, then another, no bonus. The general manager was silent, not a word from my sales manager either. The uneasy feeling that I was being taken for a ride began to settle in. Okay, the conflict has escalated. I'm fully aware of the problem. Part 3, which is paragraph 3. I realized that my bonus was nowhere in sight and began to lose my patience. There we go. The kettle is beginning to boil. I spoke to my general manager, the man who owed me the bonus. He replied that I should talk to my sales manager. I did. I don't know anything about it. Morris is waiting for the trade-in to sell and then he'll consider it, said my sales manager, Jim. I replied that my bonus was not contingent on future sales. I sold the car, so I should get paid. Jim just shrugged. When the man kept singing this tune for another couple of weeks, I knew they were taking me for a ride. Now I was really getting angry. This was not just about the money for me. It was a matter of principle. My dignity was at stake. This is the high point of the conflict. And now we're getting into the resolution. Paragraph 4, I must do something about it, right? This is part 4. When it became clear that I was not going to make any progress just by trying to reason with my managers, I knew I had to do something more drastic. I had never been in such a situation before. I had to face the general manager of the store and make a demand. That's exactly what I did. I grabbed a check request form, approached the manager's podium, and placed the form on the desk in front of Morris. This is my official request for the bonus you owe me. I don't owe you anything, he replied. That was all I needed, an official refusal. At that moment, I resolved that I was fully prepared to lose my job and take Morris to court. This was the most drastic professional decision I had ever had to make. And there I was, filled with resolve. Well, there was one last thing I could do before taking legal action. I went to the owner of the dealership and told him what had happened. I'll look into it, Michael said. He had a solid reputation with us guys. There we go. See, this is drastic action, and you can tell the character is undergoing a transformation. Okay, because he's facing a situation he has never faced before, and he's taking new action he had never taken before. Paragraph 5. When I showed up for work the next day, I was greeted with quiet cheer from my fellow salespeople. The news was that Morris, my general manager, had been fired, and we had a new general manager. I don't pretend to think that he was fired solely because of me, but this incident might have been the straw that broke the camel's back. I guess the owner had been getting fed up with his general manager's behavior, and he fired him. I got a sweet feeling of satisfaction. Hey, there was justice in the world after all. About 2 weeks later, at the regular check distribution, I got my bonus. Michael, the store owner, kept his word and did more. He really looked into the situation and he decided to right the wrong. I was elated at this triumph. It was then that I knew that what goes around does indeed come around. See, we begin with a theme, what goes around comes around, and we end with a theme, what goes around comes around. It's kind of like a conclusion. And you can totally do that, and this works. Step 4, revise and fine-tune. Here are some of the things that you can do. Add dialogue. If you realize that one of the paragraphs is too thin, you can add substance to it by writing out dialogue instead of just describing action. So instead of writing, he refused to pay, you can write, he said, I won't pay you because I don't owe you anything, and let's put an end to this conversation. You see? So you're turning description into dialogue, and this is how you expand your essay. You can remove or shorten dialogue. Now, if you notice that one of your paragraphs has gotten a little out of hand or is too long, and you want to shorten it, take out some dialogue, convert it to description. Dialogue adds life to your essay, but don't write too much of it because this is not a play or a short story. Have a balance of dialogue and description. Check back with your outline. You created your outline for a reason. See if each paragraph roughly follows it. Now, as you're writing your essay, check in with your outline. Make sure that it kind of conforms more or less. It doesn't have to be precise, but it more or less conforms to the outline that you created. You can always move things around. If you feel a sentence or two belong in another paragraph, move them there. Finally, proofread. Proofread for things like overall structure and flow, sentence structure, grammar, and any typos that may have sneaked in. There we go. I have this tutorial on my blog too, so if you'd rather read it, because there's a bunch of stuff to read, I'll include the link in the description.